Dobar dan svima. Ovo je jedino, vrlo brzo ću preći na engleski. Evo, hvala vam svima što ste došli. Thank you all for coming on this very sunny day. I know it was tempting to be on a terrace drinking coffee, but this is much better place to be, trust me. So I'm very happy to say hello to Ruth Beckermann. I'm very glad to meet you, and thank you very much for coming to Zagreb. You're interrupted filming of your new film, right? Just for us, yes, great. So Ruth is coming from Vienna. Ruth is primarily a director of documentary films. If I counted correctly, you directed so far 13 feature films, am I right? So 12 of them documentaries, or maybe you disagree. If all 12 of them are documentaries, we will talk about that as well. And one which is a hybrid film, and Ruth won many awards. A couple of awards on a Berlin Film Festival, including for the latest film Mutzenbacher, and you was Austrian candidate for Oscar as well, right? So great filmography. And yesterday we had a chance to see Croatian premiere of the latest film Mutzenbacher. Have you seen it? All of you? Okay.
Maybe you come closer.
Yeah. Please do, because... So, let's start talking about your newest film, Mutzenbacher, that you're promoting around Europe right now. So, why did you make this film? Let's start from this, the most difficult question. But how did you choose the topic? And I read that you were for years joking that you're going to make a film about a book about this book. Yeah. So.
Okay. Hello. Thank you for having me. Well, this is always a very difficult question, because there is the long run and the short run. And there's the moment when you decide to make a film, but there's a long period before, always, even subconsciously. So for me, the easier part of it is to answer why at a certain moment I decided to make the film. This was during COVID, thanks to COVID, because I couldn't make a film in the beginning in 2020 because of the lockdowns. Then I wrote another film taking place in Vienna. I thought, well, in a couple of months I will be able to shoot this film. Then again, this was not possible. So then I said, okay, now, fuck it. I make this film finally. Because anyway, who cares? Yeah, it was this moment of liberty. Yeah? Now I do something different, something crazy. And that was in a year before the shooting. We were shooting exactly a year ago. And around a year before that, I had decided that I want to attack this book and this subject. And it took me quite a long time to do research and to think about it and to select certain texts out of the book, because the book has almost 200 pages. But I didn't know at all which form the film will take in the end. I met historians, I read a lot about the time when the book was written, which was turn of the century. The book was published in 1906, and that was the same year as Freud's theory about children's sexuality came out. So it was, and Arthur Schnitzler, a couple of years later, wrote La Ronde, Der Reigen. So it was a time when people talked a lot about sexuality and also about children's sexuality. So I read a lot about this time and Vienna at the time, and I met a couple of prostitutes to find out what they think about the book and how they live and feel and so on. And in the end I decided to make the film as it is, meaning it's a film confronting the book or passages out of the book with men of today.
Let's just briefly talk about the book, because I must admit I did not know about the book before seeing your films, and I googled it. It was translated to Croatian, but only I found out a couple of years ago in some pornographic paperback cheap edition. I don't know if it was translated before or even so. I don't know if anyone here has read the book or know about the book. So can you tell us a little bit about this book? It was supposedly written by author of Bambi, right? Or it's not true in the end? Do you know?
Well, as I said, it was published in 1906 anonymously, and till today, of course, many editions came out, but it was illegal till 1969 in Germany, which means a lot, the date, meaning after the so-called revolution of 1968, the book was finally published by a serious edition, editor. Before it was, you know, like all these cheap, illegal books. And I know that it's translated into French and English. I don't know about other languages. But something funny happened. A friend of mine found an edition of Miniatur Mutzenbacher in German, published in the German Democratic Republic. Just before the fall of the wall, it was 3 small books. So maybe the publishing of this book was contributed to the downfall of the wall of Berlin. That's what I thought. But okay, that's a joke. But I mean, so you see, the book was, it's very well written. It's also not only a porn, it is straight porn book, but it also tells a lot about how people lived at this time, at this period, in this when Vienna became a big city. Many people from other parts of the empire migrated to Vienna and lived in these new buildings where water was on the corridor, the toilet on the corridor, very small apartments, and people even had roomers, meaning that, for instance, a waiter who worked at night slept in the bed of a worker during the day. So they shared beds. So there were people living very closely together, meaning that men and kids, everybody was around, so having sex and just not care a lot about who with whom was probably quite realistic at the time. Of course, not like in a porn book, but it has also some sociological value, this book, in my opinion. And well, the book was read by many, many generations of youngsters, like myself, when I was young, very young, because of course, you searched for information. There was no internet, so somewhere, somehow, you found this book. And yeah, so I think, and when it came out in '69, everybody read it. It was kind of breaking taboos, you know, that finally it was on paper. And because this was a time full of taboos about not speaking about sex and so on, before 1968, the 50s, 60s. So this book was kind of liberating.
So for your generation, it's like common knowledge, this book. Everybody in Austria who
Yes.
more knows
Germany
about the
as
book,
well.
or Germany as well.
Yeah. But when we made the film, we found out that people who are below 40 would maybe know who Mutzenbacher, because it became like a label. You have a Mutzenbacher bar in Berlin and one in Vienna, you know who this was. It's like a myth, yeah? But they didn't read the book.
So it's autobiography of underage prostitute living in Vienna in the end of the 19th century, but it's completely fictional, right? And written by probably by a man from that time, or it's not known who has written it. But,
it's not known, and it's not an autobiography.
Well, fictional. Fictional autobiography.
Yeah, it's in this tradition of female memoir, and many books at the time were written in this, even if they were written by men, with the voice of a female main character. So we don't know who wrote the book. For a long time, everybody thought it was Felix Salten, the author of Bambi, which of course is fun, but as they got all his legacy in the National Library in Vienna, they checked and they didn't find any hint that it was written by him. So we don't know who wrote it, but supposedly a man. I mean.
Okay, let's watch the first clip from the film so we can talk about the style of the film and everything else.
Da bleib ich immer drin. Lass dir nur Zeit, lass dir nur Zeit. Ich spritz nicht, jetzt werde es herausziehen unangenehm. Jetzt darf ich auf einmal fügen, nicht wahr? Jetzt darf ich. Und zuerst hast mich nicht drüber lassen wollen. Und zuerst hast mich nicht drüber lassen wollen. Jetzt aber darf ich mit dem Dutt spielen, was jetzt heißt's nichts mehr. Ich bin ein braver Frau.
Kennen Sie das Buch?
Ich habe es nicht gelesen, ehrlich gesagt.
Sie kennen es?
Ja, von dem Leben.
Vielleicht erzählen Sie es immer
Okay, naja, es beginnt.
dass ich ja gelesen habe.
Ich weiß jetzt nicht ganz genau, in welchem Alter es beginnt, aber es beginnt also im Mädchenalter und dauert ungefähr bis zum 17., 18. Lebensjahr. Und es ist sehr viel derber Sex im Keller und auf Dachböden und eben Mädchen, Kinder mit Männern. Alles sehr gewöhnlich und nah. Die zentralen Sätze sind: Hast eh nichts gesehen? Sagst eh nichts? Und die zentralen Worte bei der Frau sind Futt und Dutteln. Beim Mann Stängel, eventuell ja Spargel. Also es ist relativ derb. Das ist mir beim Lesen auch aufgefallen. Wir leben ja in einer gewissen feindlichen, männerfeindlichen Zeit. Und da dürften die Frauen, zumindest die im Buch eine Rolle finden, die dürften noch irgendwie ein bisschen Spaß gehabt haben an Männern und an Männlichkeit und an dem körperlichen Austausch. Also das ist momentan oder in der Zeit, in der wir leben, eigentlich völlig verloren gegangen, weil man hauptsächlich nur noch über die Übergriffe von Männern spricht und über die Schattenseiten in jeder Form und man da schon feststellt, die haben scheinbar einen Spaß gehabt an Männern.
Das ist ein sehr interessanter Aspekt. Können Sie da ein Beispiel geben oder wie Sie das erleben, diese Männerfeindlichkeit?
Ja, man erlebt sie ja hauptsächlich schon mal durch die Medien oder durch ich habe heute auch nachgedacht, es gibt zwar den Begriff der toxischen Männlichkeit, aber nicht den Begriff der toxischen Weiblichkeit. Und man spricht also nur über das Toxische an Männern. Ja, und damit tritt alles in den Hintergrund. Es gibt da so diese Art von, also das ist jetzt nicht Flirt, aber generell, also früher hat man gesagt Flirt oder ähnliches, das hat sich eigentlich verloren. Aber auch deshalb, weil man gar nicht mehr weiß, wie es dann auf einen zurückfällt. Ja, so. Aber die haben noch Spaß gehabt. Also von der Perspektive der Frau zum Mann, weil ich glaube, es gibt kaum eine Frau, die heute herumläuft und sagt, ich habe einen Spaß auf einem Mann. Also ich kenne keine.
Sie auch nicht? Ich schon.
Ja, herumläuft.
Das wäre sehr traurig.
Dann habe ich noch eine Frage. Wen würden Sie spielen? Weil Sie haben es ja gelesen. Wenn Sie sich aussuchen, und wie würden Sie ihn besetzen, den Kollegen?
Ja, ich könnte nur der eine Junge sein, der sagt, ich kann nicht. Sie nimmt einen Jungen mit in den Keller irgendwann einmal, Nachbarsbuben. Und dem erklärt sie, naja, du hast doch einen Schwanz und klar kannst du. Und er sagt, ich kann nicht. Und verlässt den Keller wieder, ohne mit ihr Sex gehabt zu haben. Das wäre das einzige Angebot als Schauspieler, das ich Ihnen machen kann.
Okay, so can you tell us a little bit how the film was made? So the whole film is basically a big casting for the roles for the fiction film that never happens, right? So how did you write an advertisement in the newspapers, and how many men did answer it, and did only men answer it, or did women as well? But you chose not only to show men.
Well, at a certain point I decided to make the film only with men. And in the beginning of the film, there's an insert showing our casting call. We put out the casting call saying, looking for men between the age of 16 and 99 for a documentary about starting off from the book The Memories of Josephine Mutzenbacher, Memories of a Viennese Whore. So it was quite obvious whom we're looking for, so only men applied, because we're looking only for men, and around 150 or 155 men applied, just saying their age, a photograph and stuff. So I chose on the couch. Yeah, then, okay, we decided to make the film in one place, which was a former factory, abandoned factory used as a cultural center. And we kind of built a casting situation, meaning light and this sofa. The sofa was the very important accessory or prop, yeah. So I think this is, you saw the sofa now. It was pink and with flowers, so a mixture of, as one man right in the beginning when he sits down, he says, is this a former erotic sofa? So it's a mixture, you can have associations that it's erotic or Freudian or whatever. A casting couch. Actually, this was my casting couch. And around 75 men were sitting on this couch. Not all, half of them are in the film. So the idea was to invite them, to choose them by, out of these 150 applications, some young, some middle-aged, some old, some, looking by profession. I mean, just this, choosing them. And then I didn't meet them before. When they came, there was a waiting area with a buffet, and then I was sitting already in this casting situation, and I asked my assistant to bring in 1 or 2 or 3, once 4. But 4 was a bit too much for the sofa. So quite soon I found out that putting two together is the most interesting combination, because it could be possible that they start talking to each other, which happened quite often, and sometimes was very interesting. Yeah, and everybody who came in, of course, had to read a passage out of the book, which was for some completely shocking, because they didn't know what will happen when they came to the casting. I mean, they knew, and many people Googled the book, of course. Some of them read a bit, because you can read it online. But the first thing they had to do is sit down on the couch or stand somewhere in the room and read a passage of this porn book. So this was kind of a trigger to make them talk about themselves or talk about the book, what they think about it, and so on.
In any moment, if some of you have a question, please give me a sign. But let me ask you, it seems to me that I would say majority of men in this film are over 40 or maybe even over 50, right? Like, and then there are some young men. But to me, it was quite interesting to see how the older men are much more relaxed in front of the camera and much more openly talk about sexuality and about sex and about book and the young ones somehow seem much more shocked with the book. Was it just a feeling from the film, or was it really? Did you feel it? Was it only because you chose clips like that in your film, or was it your feeling as well? In a whole. Can you compare?
No, I can't compare by age. There were so many different types of men. I mean, some intellectuals, some more bourgeois people, some more from the people. I don't know how to say it in English. How do you call them? Viennese types. There was one, he was stepping out of the book. Yeah? I mean, the book is using a lot of Viennese language and many Viennese expressions for sex, the different organs, and so on. So some younger men even didn't know those expressions. Myself, I didn't know all the expressions that are used in the book. So it's hard to describe. I mean, if you didn't see the film, I'm not going to describe the whole film now. Go and see it somewhere.
You said today that this is not a documentary for you. Why? Or something, I didn't hear it myself, but Dina told me that you were talking about the film. So that you don't consider it real documentary.
I mean, this is a difficult question, because what is a documentary? Of course, this is kind of a documentary because they are real people. They answer questions in front of a camera, or they read something in front of a camera, but already the book is fiction. The passages they read are fiction. And the setting is, I mean, I'm not going to their homes. It's not their own setting, or it's not a bar or a cafe or in the street. It's not a documentary setting. It's a setting I built, I lit up. So it's a hybrid. It's something. But what is a real documentary? I mean, that's the question. Because you always decide where to put the camera, and then you decide in the editing room which scenes you take. So the whole idea of, I mean, there is the genre of documentary, but many people confuse it with reality. I think a film is never showing reality. It's always made a product which is made by someone. And if TV wants to believe us, or some reporting from Ukraine now wants us to believe that this is reality. And then if you look, if you watch a couple of days and you see the same images for different villages even, then you understand that this is completely fake, yeah? But they want to make us believe that they show us the reality. And when I make a film, I want people to understand that it's me who made the film, who decided who is in front of the camera, where is the camera, which framing, and in the editing room again. Yeah? So I think that's the important difference between making serious documentaries to make people understand that this is not real life and this is not reality. This is an excerpt of reality made by a certain person.
Yes, but I think this is for the documentary author. I think almost everybody have a different answer to this question. Where do you draw the line between documentary and fiction when you make your films? Do you have some border, like I'm going to do this, but I'm not going to do that because it will become fiction, or you just do it intuitively or something? Or?
Of course, I mean, this is not the Mutzenbacher is not a fiction film. There is even a film from the 70s called made out of the book, yeah, having a person playing Josephine and so on, yeah. I mean, this is completely different. But for instance, now I make a film in a school class, about a school class of kids who are around 9 years old. And I shoot a lot like direct cinema, just observing. So everybody would say this is real documentary. Of course it is. And then I decided to do something different with the kids. I gave them mobile phones and asked them to film themselves. So it's already me who changed their life or reality. And then in a next step, we are now working with always 3 kids together, and one is the camera person, one is the interviewer, and one is interviewed. So they learn how to make interviews, and we learn a lot about their lives or their interests. So this is not, is this documentary? Of course, they do it, but it was my idea to make them do it. It's not just observing them. So, but this film is much more documentary because I film a school class and what's going on in school and the kids talking and the teacher and so on. So everybody would say that's a real documentary.
Did you, in this film, did some of the men who you filmed decided not to be part of the film after the shooting? So I hear one of the characters saying that he will still think about if he wants to be in the film or something like that. You gave them the chance to withdraw their approval of the film after the shooting, or how did you work with this?
No, they signed a release. And in the film there are also some scenes with 100 men in the same space. So on one day I asked 100 men to come, and I had done some, it's not a rap, but it's kind of, I took out some words or phrases and rhythmicized them, put them in a certain rhythm, and these 100 men shout them, speak them, sing them, whatever. So there was one who participated and then said he doesn't want to be in it. So he was out. But for the others, not yet. I mean, not all of them have seen the film yet. We'll see what happens, because it was not shown in Vienna yet.
But in the editing room, do you have like sense of responsibility, or how do you choose what to include in the film or what to leave out of the film? I know it's a very broad question, but you know, I'm talking. one of the characters even says, and you left it in the film, that you have a lot of power over him because you can edit it whatever you want from his words. But he trusts you that you are not going to misuse him. So,
but that's with every film. It's like that. That you don't. I don't want to make fun of the people I film. I don't want to expose them in an ugly way. I would never do that, and I hope that it doesn't happen to me. But that's in everything you do in life or in filmmaking. Either you want to make fun of people, then I would rather take actors.
Do you have a question? Okay. Let me. I'm thinking about maybe if you don't have a question about Muslim. Okay, there is one.
One question is because I think very nice the part you choose now to show, because actually this man says that men are considered now as aggressive and women perceive them aggressive, but your film shows the opposite. All these men are so sweet and they're so shy and they don't know exactly how to behave, and they're so sweet in their shyness, not to use too ugly words, and it's really very, very controversial to this image of the aggressive man. And I wonder what has happened in Vienna, because if you look at the Viennese dialect, at least in the 70s and 80s or 90s of the last century, and also there's a Viennese writer who collected all the Viennese obscene words, and you have already in the language a proof of a very broad erotical proletarian culture. There are hundreds of words for fucking, and you also have this choir where they use these 7 words, I think. And has this get lost, or how are these different layers about this base of some erotic proletarian culture in Vienna, also portrayed in the book, and the shyness of all these men who don't really dare to say fuck or cunt?
Well, one reason for me to make the film was that women, many times they say or think that men don't talk openly about their feelings and their needs and so on. And I was curious myself to find out what happens if I put men on a couch and make them talk. And I found out that they are quite open. And as you say, of course, they were probably a bit intimidated. It was not in a bar. They didn't have a beer in front of them, or many beers. So, of course, it was a casting situation. So they behaved. But the atmosphere, even when there were 100 men, when we did, and it's a pity that you don't show this. You don't have the extract, no? Of this big scene. No. Okay, the choral. The atmosphere was so relaxed. They really enjoyed it and had fun. And this was surprising and nice to me. So this was one of the interests I had to make the film. And the other one was also that today, I have the feeling that today people, or the media, or even people, talk about sex mostly in a negative way, when they talk about abuse or AIDS or dangers and so on. And that, yeah, as this man says, flirting or flirtation or even just talking about sex is a bit lost. I mean, as I remember before, maybe before the internet and Tinder and all these possibilities, people talked a bit differently. Maybe today they text. I don't know.
Do you think that men censored themselves because you were asking the questions and not, I don't know, some other man? If the man would direct this film, would it look very different, do you think? Or
I think it wouldn't be possible. I think in our atmosphere today of new taboos and censorship, if a man would have made this film about a porn book, and I mean the main character in this book is a girl. She starts having sex at the age of 7 or something, yeah? So it would be impossible. I mean, even I thought, my editor and me, when we were in the editing room, we thought nobody will screen this film. Because today there are new taboos. I mean, people talk about abuse of kids, but nobody really looks at it. So I think it wouldn't be. I think it would be interesting to find out, but I think it wouldn't be possible. And I'm not sure that men would talk more openly with a man. When I made this film, East of War, also a film about men, by the way, about former soldiers of the German Wehrmacht, the German army, whom I filmed in an exhibition about the atrocities the German army committed on the Balkans and in Eastern Europe. It was an exhibition with 1,000 photographs, horrible photographs. It was much easier for men to talk to me than to another man, because men, in a way, they still, in a way, don't take a woman seriously. They are not afraid of a woman, which is a big advantage, being a woman. They're afraid of women, but in another way. But anyway, in this context of the war crimes, they didn't take me seriously because I immediately made clear that I don't understand anything about military and war. So they talked very openly to me. And they too, they just talked. Everybody talks to me.
okay. Wants to talk with the question?
I'm interested in how did you decided to end the film, because the last few sentences are very symbolic in a way that they again, in my perception, they again made these different energies of feminine and masculine, and what is happening in these sexual connections. So like this changing, connecting of these two energies. So maybe you could, if you can describe a little bit more how did you decide to end it up with those last...
You mean the end of the film?
Yes. Yeah.
The last person reading?
Isn't it the comment? Is it from the book, the last few sentences, or or it was your part as an author?
No, everybody reads parts of the book.
Right.
But maybe you mean the man who reads in the beginning and in the end?
I'm interested for the last few sentences of the film. Is it from the book?
Yes. The book is written, constructed in the form of a female memoir, meaning that Josephine is an old woman and she writes the book and remembers her childhood and her youth. So the same man who starts the film, who reads in the beginning and says, I'm looking back to my young years and he comes back in the end and reads the last sentences of the book.
Did you have any intention with how did you choose that part of the book to end the film?
Well, I chose it not only because it's the end of the book, but also because I found it interesting to break life down to two simple sentences. or to find it amusing to break down the whole gender and sex question down to the sentences. What's the difference between men and women? They lie upon us, we lie down under them, and they fuck and we are fucked, or something like that. I mean, that's not a good translation now, but it's like a philosophy of life, yeah, in a funny way. That's the whole difference, is the last sentence. That's the whole difference.
But in the same time, it is the end of the book. I
Yes.
guess. Oh.
Yes. Why do you ask? I mean, why is it important?
For me, it's very symbolic. It means a lot to me. I don't know. It explains everything, and it still tells the roles that we are playing and the positions we are in and everything in the whole world, not just in sexual meaning.
Yeah.
So that's why.
Okay, let's move on to film that you just mentioned a few minutes ago, East of War. So I find these two films similar in a way, because both films are in a style. Both films happen in a Mutzenbacher and East of War in one space, where you film people reacting to provocation. And the difference is that in East of War, this provocation was not staged by you, but it was the exhibition that happened in Vienna in 1995. And that was the first exhibition, am I right, that publicly have shown the crimes that were done by Wehrmacht soldiers during World War II. In 1995, when I have seen it, it seemed to me, okay, in 1995 Croatia was on completely other place. We had our history that we all know. But for me it was really shocking to find out that in Austrian public discourse until 1995 it was like was it a taboo topic or something that you don't talk about? Can you tell us a little bit of a context of this exhibition?
Well, not only in Austria, but this exhibition toured Germany before. This was an exhibition produced in Germany, and it was a big provocation. Till 1995, the public reading was that the SS and the SA were the bad guys, and the Wehrmacht soldiers were innocent, more or less. So this exhibition was a big scandal. There were demonstrations in Munich and in other cities. And in the beginning of the film, you also see many men shouting and quarreling, and it was very mediatized. Before it came to Vienna, our boulevard newspaper, Kronenzeitung, already wrote many articles and headlines against this exhibition, which makes our good soldiers, yeah, ugly and so on. So it took till 95 and a team of historians had for many years collected all these photographs in Belgrade, in Russia and in other places, and in private albums showing really German soldiers hanging partisans or hanging people in the street and in ice cold water, and these people are like ice blocks and shatter, and cutting the beards of Orthodox Jews, just tearing the beards out, and I mean really horrible photographs. So in this exhibition was on for 5 or 6 weeks in Vienna. We were shooting almost every day, and mainly men came to see the exhibition, and many former soldiers came. So it was really the right, that's what I found out in my life as a filmmaker, that for documentaries the right moment is very important. when you make a film. And I think 95 or around this period was a good time, because those men who have been soldiers in the war were still alive, but old, not really working anymore, but retired, so closer to death. So they were more ready to speak about their life. They started to rethink a little bit their life. And I think 10 years before, when I was shooting in the streets in 1986, when I was myself a demonstrator against Kurt Waldheim, I think you know who this was, those men wouldn't have been ready to talk about their wartime experiences. So I think it's very important, and of course this exhibition was a good place, because the photographs were very emotional and triggered some memories or provoked something. And the moment, yeah.
Let's watch the first clip from the film. So please, can you skip Mutzenbacher and go to the third clip straight away?
Ich war sowas erlebt. Ich war bei der 2. Panzerdivision.
Und ich war bei der 11.
Das war im Mai 40, der Frankreich-Feldzug, die Erstürmung von Boulogne am Meer. Das war in der Nacht, und da hat sich einer herübergeschlichen, ein Engländer, und hat sich verirrt gehabt im Hafengebiet. Und anstelle, dass den geschnappt hätten und nach hinten getrieben, hat ihn einer erschossen. Er hat gesagt, es ist mir zu mühselig, dass ich den Engel wieder schieße. Ein Bang, weg war er.
Das war in Russland genau dasselbe.
Aber das waren Einzelfälle natürlich.
Einzelfälle.
Ja, aber es war vorhanden.
Ja.
Finden Sie das als Einzelfälle, die Massenerschießungen?
Nein, das nicht. Nein, das, was ich erzählt habe.
So, was Sie erlebt
Da in
haben.
Boulogne.
Ja.
Das war ein Einzelfall.
Ich war nämlich auch bei der Wehrmacht und weiß, was zugegangen ist.
Ich habe Glück gehabt, das war der einzige Fall, wo man sowas unternehmen kann.
Jetzt wissen wir es, ja.
Und die Leute, ihre eigenen Kameraden, haben ausgestochene Augen und abgeschnittene Geschlechtsteile. So hat es angefangen, nämlich in Russland, die Repressalien. Das ist in Ordnung. Das ist ja nur einseitig aufgearbeitet.
Was war vorher? Der Einmarsch, der war in Ordnung?
Der war in Ordnung.
Und diese Hinrichtungen, was
Moment, ich rede jetzt von Russland.
Ja.
Ich rede von
Nein,
Russland.
und Russland sind sie einmarschiert, ohne
sagen.
dass eine Kriegserklärung
Na,
stattgefunden hat.
pass auf, ich sage einmal,
Ein Pakt war verhandelt. Sie brauchen da nichts beschönigen.
Welche Jahrgang sind Sie?
25er. Ich war mit dabei bei den Songs, bei den Trägen.
Von Anfang sind Sie gekommen?
Natürlich.
Aha. Ja. Und da sind Sie auch mit der Absicht gekommen? Also
Warum verteidigen Sie heute so eine Schweinerei?
Nein, ich verteidige die Einseitigkeit.
Die Einseitigkeit?
Einseitigkeit, ja.
Das ist keine Einseitigkeit, wenn Sie das durchlesen und ausschauen. Ja. Und wenn Sie das heute noch unterstützen, sind Sie eher Verbrecher gewesen.
Ach so, na, das sind wir alle Verbrecher gewesen. Ja.
In this film, this is also similar to Mutzenbacher. Of course, we feel your presence all the way, but you're very restrained. You let us, the viewers, make the judgment. You're not judging, although I know that you have very strong feelings about the exhibition, about these people that you were filming, and it must have been hard to I think it's brilliant because you let film speak for itself. You're not. But were you tempted to put your voiceover in, or to make your presence more seen?
Well, I must say it was the most difficult shooting, to go there every day, and also physical. I mean, smell was not always good. Some of those men had a couple of beers or vodka or whatever before they went in the exhibition. And I was lucky to work with a cameraman who was very funny. So he he had some funny sayings like everyone who wears a hat is guilty and things like that. You know, you had to make fun to keep going. And what helped me was that I wrote a kind of diary expressing my feelings. And in the first days I was very emotional, and then I decided deliberately to step back inside and to have a kind of cold gaze, which is good, I think, making films. Better than being too emotional, because the emotions, as you said, should come with the spectators, and I don't think that one should, or for me, it wouldn't be the right thing to propose answers, but I just want to expose something and have people who see the films discuss among them. And after this film, I mean, this was amazing, because when it came out, the next generation started, after watching the film, to discuss about their own parents and fathers. And so many didn't know anything about the wartime of their fathers. So it really provoked a lot of discussions. And I think that's good when a film provokes people to think themselves. And I don't like films who give you a certain strong opinion, which doesn't mean that a film is objective. Of course it's not. And there is an important scene in this film where I discuss with one man. There was one who was an officer or something high during the war, and there there's a small discussion with him. Because I think at a certain point I wanted also to make clear that I'm on which side I'm on, yeah? Especially in this, with this subject.
Yeah, but I was a bit surprised how many of people were ready to defend Hitler openly. So I believe that many people in Croatia and in Austria at home think that Hitler was a good guy, you know. But to talk so openly in front of the camera, I find it very curious, you know, about atmosphere in Austria at that time. Yeah.
Well, that's quite a long time ago. These men are dead now, well, this was in the beginning. The scene you chose is about this question, which was still a question. Was it? They don't defend Hitler in everything he did, but they still think that it was kind of a defense, that Russia was already ready to attack. So Hitler or the Germans had to attack first. That's their thinking, which is, of course, we know today that it's not true. But in a way, I think you chose this clip because that's what Putin says today, that they had to attack Ukraine because NATO was almost attacking them. Did you think?
Yeah, well, that was part of the reason, because I also find this film in a strange way connected to what happens today, for different reasons. Because first, many of these men are talking about their wartime in Russia and in Ukraine, and they're mentioning the same towns that we watch on the news in the last weeks. But also we are watching in last months this reversal that Russian are having propaganda that they are fighting Nazis again. And so they're using the word Nazi in a way that is completely different that the rest of the world uses it. So that was part of the reason that they chose this clip. So Can you comment on that? You know, how do you watch it from this perspective, this film?
Well, actually, it's a film about committing crimes. It's not a film about being a soldier. Just I mean, one has to make this difference. It's a film about committing war crimes. And this happens probably in every war to a certain extent. And we see it today in Ukraine. And it happened in Algeria, it happens in Israel, it happens today. So it's actually a question, that's why you can generalize what is the responsibility of a soldier? When can he say no? And it was possible even in World War II to say no. There are a couple of guys who say that you didn't have to go and kill the partisans or the Jews or whatever. If you would volunteer, you got 2 or 3 days off, or you got better food or whatever. But nobody was forced, or nobody had any repressalien if he didn't do it. So the thing that was interesting to me is it because the saying in this generation of men was always, we didn't have a choice. If you would have done it, you would have been shot or sent to a concentration camp and so on. And that's definitely not true. And that was what interesting for me. Is war always the same war? And where are the limits in a war for a soldier? So it's about this, turning around about this question, the whole film.
In your diary about this film, you wrote that politicians ignored this exhibition because obviously it was a hot potato politically at the time. And how is it now, today in Austria? Can you compare it? Did things change really? We have this new rise of right-wing parties in the last decades, so it also happens in Austria, from what I read. So can you?
Of course, but this changed. I hope it will not change back, but since the mid-90s, at this time after the Waldheim affair, this was in '86, and Waldheim, who was elected president, was lying about his wartime here in Yugoslavia and in Greece, saying that he was sick and at home and so on while he was serving and being as an officer quite involved. So he was, after people discovered that he was lying, and before that he was already for 10 years Secretary of the United Nations. And he was still elected president because most of the Austrians believed him, that he was not lying, but that all of these Wehrmacht soldiers were good guys. So after he was elected, a really big discussion started. And in '92, I think, the Chancellor of Austria, Franz Vranitzky, for the first time admitted, for the first time, '92, admitted that Austria was not a victim of the German Nazis, but was part of the game, part of the crime. That Austrians were the same in the hierarchy as Germans. So it takes a long time. I think it takes a long time here to confront the history of these days.
You probably know that for Croatian revisionists and neo-Nazis, place in Austria is like a holy land. Bleiburg, you know, there's the place where, in the end of the World War II, was a massacre of the remains of the Ustasha army done by partisans. So Austria was for years, I think, ignoring it, although it was very large revisionist. Every year there was buses traveling from Croatia to Bleiburg, and
they still come.
Yeah, but I think in last years Austria started punishing any neo-Nazi symbols or Ustasha symbols, so, but only recently, I think.
I think 2 years ago they started to, before even Austrian politicians went there, openly, together with all these Ustasha guys. So yeah, takes a long time.
Yeah, well, our countries are friends, good friends for decades. Okay, let's watch one more clip from the film about, I think we have
You're
time.
the boss.
Ich war bei der 6. Armee bis in den Raum von Stalingrad und das stimmt schon, die Bilder, die man hier sieht, das ist also wahr. Scharkow zum Beispiel, da draußen sind sehr viele Bilder von Scharkow. Da waren die Leute aufgehangen an den Balkonen, an den Häusern, an den Gaslaternen etc. Dann hat es über 20 Grad minus gehabt, die sind gefroren wie Holzblöcke. Wenn da der Wind gegangen ist, man nachts durch die Straßen gegangen, hat es ja wahnsinnig geklappert. Die Leichen haben wie Holz gegeneinander geschlagen. Es war schon schauderhaft. Also es ist schon wahr, was da gezeigt wird.
Mein Vater ist 43 zu Hause gestorben. Die werden heute alle als Mörder hingestellt. Das kann ich nicht glauben. Das kann ich nicht glauben. Und ich weiß von Erzählungen, dass immer gesagt worden ist, wir sind angeschossen worden, wir haben uns natürlich gewehrt und wir mussten uns wehren. Und das glaube ich. Ich glaube nicht diese willkürlichen Erhängungen, Erschießungen, ich glaube es nicht. Ich glaube nicht, dass meine Onkel Mörder sind. Ich glaube auch nicht, dass mein Großvater Mörder ist. Das kann ich nicht glauben, sonst müsste ich mich selbst aufhängen. Aber das hier, das macht uns das glauben, dass unsere Onkel, unsere Väter Mörder waren. Denn sie stellen sie als Mord hin und nicht, gut, es war ein Angriffskrieg, ja, aber es war nicht so, wie es hier dargestellt wird. Sicher nicht, das kann ich nicht glauben.
Well, this is maybe the only woman in the film, one of the very few women, or maybe the only one, you know. There was another one, yeah. But also she, I think, she perfectly shows the struggle of the next generation that you talked about, right? And how this woman feels today, 20 years later. Can you imagine, you know, or
no, but I mean, I myself, we were all shocked when we saw the exhibition. All of us were shocked because it's more than 1,000 photographs. And it's something nobody had talked about before. So I think she believes it, but she struggles, as you say. Emotionally, she doesn't want it to be as it was.
Is there a question or a comment? Or okay, let's move on to the. To another film, which is quite different in style, but I think we opened this topic of family history. So this is film Paper Bridge, in which you travel through Europe to the town where your father was born, right? It's the film is called Paper Bridge, and let's maybe start. Is this the most personal film that you've made? At least from this that I have seen, it seems. Did you find it difficult, hard to make such a personal film?
Well, this was one of my earliest films, and it was very difficult to make it because I made the film in '85 and '86. It came out in '87. And at the time, nobody talked in Austria about the fate of the Jews. This was a big taboo. In school, we always tried it was open, it was in my documents that I'm Jewish, but we didn't talk about it. Nobody talked about it. It was ignored, or there was anti-Semitism and so on and so on. So to make this film was difficult for me. It was like a coming out in a way, yeah? And it took me 3 years to make it, not because I didn't have the money, but because it was so difficult to make step after step. And it's not only about my family, it's about, actually it's the perspective of people of the so-called second generation, people who were born after the war and knew only bits and pieces of what had happened in general and to their family. So it was kind of a research, but my parents are only a small part of the film. But as you said, I tried to go to Chernivtsi today in Ukraine, which is the place where my father was born, but I couldn't go, I couldn't film there. My father was born when it was still part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, and then it was Romania, and today it's Ukraine. I couldn't film there. So I went to the northern part of Romania, which was, there are new borders. Chernivtsi is in Ukraine, but other parts of the Bukovina, as it was called, are in Romania. So I filmed there, and I filmed in Vienna, I filmed in Israel, Palestine, where my mother went into emigration during the war. So it's more an essay film with long traveling shots and a text I wrote. And it's an example of several films I made in this style, where the text and the voice over are very important elements of the film, in contrast to the 2 examples we talked about now.
Yeah, let's see a piece of the film to exactly what you're talking about. So please, can we show last clip?
Da bleib ich immer drin, lass dir nur Zeit, lass dir nur Zeit. Ich spritz nicht, jetzt werde es herausziehen unangenehm. Jetzt darf ich auf einmal fügen, nicht wahr? Jetzt darf ich. Und zuerst hast mich nicht drüber lassen wollen. Und zuerst hast mich nicht drüber lassen wollen. Jetzt aber darf ich mit den Dudel spielen, was jetzt heißt's nichts mehr. Ich bin ein braune Frau.
Kennen Sie das Buch?
Ich habe es nicht gelesen, ehrlich gesagt.
Sie kennen es?
Ja, von dem Leben.
Vielleicht erzählen Sie es immer
Okay, naja, es beginnt.
dass Sie es ja gelesen haben.
Ja, ich weiß jetzt nicht ganz genau, in welchem Alter es beginnt, aber es beginnt also im Mädchenalter und dauert ungefähr bis zum 17., 18. Lebensjahr. Und es ist sehr viel derber Sex im Keller und auf Dachböden und eben Mädchenkinder mit Männern. Alles sehr gewöhnlich und nah. Die zentralen Sätze sind: Hast eh nichts gesehen? Sagst eh nichts? Und die zentralen Worte bei der Frau sind Futt und Dutteln. Beim Mann Stängel, eventuell ja Spargel. Also es ist relativ derb. Das ist mir beim Lesen auch aufgefallen. Wir leben ja in einer gewissen feindlichen, männerfeindlichen Zeit. Und da dürften die Frauen, zumindest die im Buch eine Rolle finden, die dürften noch irgendwie ein bisschen Spaß gehabt haben an Männern und an Männlichkeit und an dem körperlichen Austausch. Also das ist momentan oder in der Zeit, in der wir leben, eigentlich völlig verloren gegangen, weil man hauptsächlich nur noch über die Übergriffe von Männern spricht und über die Schattenseiten in jeder Form und man da schon feststellt, die haben scheinbar einen Spaß gehabt an Männern.
Das ist ein sehr interessanter Aspekt. Können Sie da ein Beispiel geben oder wie Sie das erleben, diese Männerfeindlichkeit?
Ja, man erlebt sie ja hauptsächlich schon mal durch die Medien oder durch ich habe heute auch nachgedacht, es gibt zwar den Begriff der toxischen Männlichkeit, aber nicht den Begriff der toxischen Weiblichkeit. Und man spricht also nur über das Toxische an Männern. Ja, und damit tritt alles in den Hintergrund. Es gibt also diese Art von, also das ist jetzt nicht Flirt, aber generell, also früher hat man gesagt Flirt oder Ähnliches, das hat sich eigentlich verloren. Aber auch deshalb, weil man gar nicht mehr weiß, wie es dann auf einen zurückfällt. Ja, so. Aber die haben noch Spaß gehabt. Also von der Perspektive der Frau zum Mann, weil ich glaube, es gibt kaum eine Frau, die heute herumläuft und sagt, ich habe einen Spaß auf einem Mann. Also ich kenne keine.
Sie auch nicht?
Ich schon.
Ja, herumläuft.
Das wäre sehr traurig. Dann habe ich noch eine Frage. Wen würden Sie spielen, weil Sie haben es ja gelesen, wenn Sie sich aussuchen, und wie würden Sie ihn besetzen, den Kollegen?
Ja, ich könnte nur der eine Junge sein, der sagt, ich kann nicht. Sie nimmt einen Jungen mit in den Keller irgendwann einmal, Nachbarsbuben. Und dem erklärt sie, naja, du hast doch einen Schwanz und klar kannst du. Und er sagt, ich kann nicht. Und verlässt den Keller wieder, ohne mit ihr Sex gehabt zu haben. Das wäre das einzige Angebot als Schauspieler, das ich Ihnen machen kann.
Yeah, this film has very spontaneous energy that you travel around and you just talk to people and people talk to you. There's something similar to the other film that we are not going to talk about today, but the one that stayed, one that go. This travelogue, where you react to the situation that you find yourself in and find the people who react to you in a way, and. It is a little bit different than it's much more how to say it, shows your way of thinking with the voiceover and with these encounters that are coming one after the other. So, but the big part of this film is about your family. You have interviews with your father and both with your mother and father, who are both survivors of World War II. So. Was it? How was your reaction of your family when you have shown them the finished film? Was it like the family film that they felt it as a family film, or?
In my opinion, it's not a family film because if you count the minutes, there are not more than 10 minutes of my parents in the film. But okay. Everybody perceives films differently, and well, the reaction of my parents was good. They loved it. My mother was a bit jealous because my father is twice in the film and she's only once in the film. This was quite a problem. No, but my father was very proud of himself, so. Yeah.
There are a lot of clips that I would like
to... But for me,
it
was difficult to film my parents. I did it in the end of the filming. First, we were filming in Romania in winter, and there are different parts in this film. One part, as you saw, that's the beginning of the film in Romania, and like a bit nostalgic or trying to find some the atmosphere of these old fairy tales and stories from this region, when there was still a Jewish population there. And there's another part which is very interesting, I think, that was shot near Osijek, here in Croatia, actually, where the Americans shot a so-called mini-series, War and Remembrance, and they couldn't shoot in Theresienstadt, so they built a set in Osijek. There's also a castle, making believe that this was Theresienstadt, and they brought extras from Sarajevo and from Vienna. Many people. I think from Vienna there were at least 50 people, and as many from Sarajevo. And those people from Vienna and Sarajevo, they were supposed to play the inmates of Theresienstadt. So in my film, I was shooting in the waiting room with the extras. So this was very exciting because it was not easy for them to play inmates of a camp and then be in a documentary. It was much easier for them to do what the director of the fiction film told them to do than to be themselves in front of a documentary camera. So there was quite some aggression also against me and my team. And it was very difficult, very cold and very difficult. But the whole film Paper Bridge was, in my opinion, not about my family so much, but more about remembering memories of how do we deal with this period of time and with how can we remember it by being extras, by shooting films, historical fiction films, by shooting travel. A shot like you've seen, which is kind of empty, but you can have all kinds of associations and thoughts. Put in empty images, you can put kind of empty images. You can put in a lot of imagination. So it's a mixture of all this, and the main subject, I always like to have a more abstract subject. That's why I don't like so much family films, is about how does my generation deal with this heritage, actually.
Do you have a question? Okay. I think we have time. I want to show another clip from the same film, and it is about what you were just talking about. It's the clip with two survivors quarreling at the table, two extras. So this next scene happens on a set of this American series. Do you remember what was the name of the series?
War and Remembrance. It was a mini-series.
Mini-series, okay.
Yeah.
So you filmed extras during the breaks, right? While they were waiting for the shooting, and most of the extras in this film were themselves survivors from that's what you say, if I understand correctly, that they traveled all over even from Israel. They came to play to be part of this
they
film.
lived in Vienna. There is an Israeli here in the scene you want to shoot, but and he's not a survivor. He's younger.
He's younger, yeah.
There were not only survivors, but some, and there were, Jewish people. They had casted in Vienna and in Sarajevo among the Jewish community, people whom they wanted to be extras, which is kind of strange to put yourself in this situation again, if you have been in a camp. But most of them haven't been in a camp. But the one in this scene has been in a camp.
Yeah, you even say that some, or at least one, insisted that he wants to play SS officer, not the, right?
Yeah, that was very interesting. Yeah, of course. One of them
Psychodrama, maybe,
wanted to play an SS man,
yeah,
but they didn't allow him to play an SS man. They wanted to, and one, I think we don't see that, but one is very funny in the film. He says, you see, they always shoot me from the profile because they want a Jewish nose in the film.
Okay, so the
it's
next...
not politically, today you would say it's not politically correct.
The next scene was in a manner of observational cinema, really, I think, excellent scene that lasts for, I think, we won't see it, the whole scene, but let's watch it and then we discuss.
Ich konnte nicht genug davon hören, von den Überlebensgeschichten. Fragte mich immer wieder, was hättest du getan? Listen geschrieben, dir die Haare gefärbt oder gekämpft oder dich abführen lassen?
Mantel von den SS-Mann und hat ihn erschossen. Den nächsten Tag in der Früh, damals war das Ghetto schon vorhanden, und wurde ein Erlass gegeben, 10.000 Juden werden jetzt erschossen. Stand der Peter, jeder Zehnter beim Raustreten wird gezählt, jeder Zehnter zum Erschießen. Es sind 10.000 erschossen worden. Und das ist die Wirkung, lähmend für alle anderen. Wir haben nur gesucht, irgendeine Rechtfertigung. Und jetzt bringen wir 100.000. Ja. Und wenn es wäre ein Widerstand gewesen, vielleicht haben sich jetzt gerettet 100.000 Juden insgesamt. Ja. Bei einem Widerstand wäre nicht einmal ein Maus entkommen. Gut. Kein einziger. Gut. Und jeder geglaubt, ich werde sein, vielleicht unter die 100.000.
Nein, glaubst du wenn der hätte nicht den SS-Mann erschossen und die Leute, was waren, jede Zehnte, wenn die werden nicht jetzt erschossen, die werden überleben, die hätten sowieso in die Kammer gegangen.
Das kannst du sagen jetzt nachher, weil jetzt geschehen ist. Aber damals hat ja kein Mensch gerechnet. Es hat gegeben ein Ghetto. Schau, wenn die hätten wollen, zu ein bisschen, du warst nicht dort. Aber wenn die gewusst hätten, dass man alle erschießen wird, das war doch die Salamitaktik von Hitler, hätte man nicht brauchen, kein Ghetto machen und kein Lager und kein KZ, man hätte ja können sie ersparen. Das teuerste, was in einem Krieg ist, Transportmittel. Da hätte man nicht brauchen, ganze Züge wegnehmen und die Juden führen, um dort zu erschießen. Man hätte ja können gleich erschießen, an Ort und Stelle. Warum wurden die transportiert?
Nein.
Das war
weißt du, was für eine wahnsinnige Arbeit ist, das 6 Millionen zu schießen?
Diese die 6 Millionen auf einen Fleck? Dort, wo sie waren.
Versuch 10.000 zu schießen auf einen Fleck.
Weißt du, wie viele in Warschau-Ghetto umgekommen sind?
Ich weiß.
Ja, eine halbe Million.
Ja,
500.000 Menschen auf einem Fleck.
Ja, aber das war ein langer Krieg.
Was heißt der lange Krieg? Wie lang? Den Aufstand war sofort alles weg, was war. Der Rest von den 500.000, man weiß nicht einmal, 400.000 oder 300.000. Aber in diese 3 Wochen Kampf in Warschauer Ghetto sind alle umgekommen.
Gut, jetzt darf ich dir was erzählen. Schau, bis bevor ich bin hier gekommen, war bei meinem Vater, wo ich bin erwachsen, ein Nachbar. Und bei diesem Nachbar, er war in die Partisanen, hat gekämpft. Und jedes Jahr in einem gewissen Tag, ich glaube etwas nach Pesach, weiß ich genau, sind alle seiner Gruppe von Partisanen bei ihm gekommen. Und die Wodka ist gegangen die ganze Nacht. Wodka getrunken und man hat gesprochen. Und es war dort eine Dame, sie war die stärkste von allen. Sie hat so getrunken und sie war eine Jugoslawin, eine nicht-jüdische. Und sie hat mir die Story von der ganzen Gruppe erzählt. Sie hat gesagt, alle, was du siehst hier, waren im Konzentrationslager und waren Kandidaten zum Sterben. Und wir haben gewusst, wir haben uns geschworen, wir sterben nicht im Gas, wir sterben von Kugeln. Vom Widerstand, aber nicht vom Gas. Und ein großes Teil ist richtig gefallen und gestorben, aber ein sehr großer Teil ist gelungen, der Flucht in die Wälder und angeschlossen die Partisanen. Und hier ist das Resultat. Nicht Gerede. Hier ist das Resultat.
This scene for me has a connection in a way to the scene in East of War. This is like a topic that I see in your films. That it's again from completely other perspective, but it's a talk between the people who were part of World War II and the next generation who are trying to figure out their position with this memory and with all these things that happened, trying to find out what they would have done. This is the question that you pose as well in the voiceover. This is the position of this younger man who is
Israeli. This is important because he is an Israeli. He cannot understand that you don't fight. and it's a completely different situation, but he thinks as an Israeli, and that was also very interesting for me to show that. And later, in the end of this discussion, he says, I will die from a bullet and not, I will die from a bullet, as if it would be obvious that he has to die from a bullet and not in bed. So this is the Israeli spirit, yeah? You fight all the time. Even in the discussion you fight. So I wanted to show the difference between this man who really was in a camp, this Polish man, and this Israeli guy. And younger guy, of course, who hasn't been there.
But that brings us, I think, to a new topic that you ask this in, that you keep asking yourself what you would do. But you also, it seems to me, gives the answer I have seen it in the Wall Street Journal, the next thing we will talk about. You were activist as well, not only a filmmaker, right? And you were doing video activism or something that preceded video activism, because in the 80s I think it was very new. Yeah. In the 90s everybody started doing video activism, but you were one of the first that had a video camera and used it to film, to document protests and try to... Can you tell us a little bit about that? How did you use video camera in the 80s?
Well, I started making films as making militant films, let's say, leaflet films, and made some short films. And during the campaign of Kurt Waldheim, the media, we were small, in the beginning a very small group of people who were against him and doing demonstrations and writing and so on. And the media, the Austrian media, completely ignored us. So actually that's why I don't know it was not my own video camera, and it was, as you said, one of the first video cameras, meaning that there were these tapes, like the old tapes, sound tapes, you know, on rolls, and you had the recorder and the camera were separate. So I just filmed our activities, not all unfortunately, but some of them, to document them for ourselves. And I didn't mean to make a film out of this material at the time, but as the Austrian media just didn't talk about us, I wanted to document it, what we did. And only, when was it? Many, many years later, in 2015, I think I started to work on a film about Kurt Waldheim. It was shown here, I think. Yeah? Yeah. It was called Waldheim's Walls and finished in 2018. And it's the first time that I worked only with footage. I didn't shoot anything. I mean, I used my own footage as part of the film, and the rest is footage from different sources.
Have you seen the film? A few have seen the film. Some. So this is a film about Kurt Waldheim, a politician who used to be General Secretary of United Nations, and then he ran for the president of Austria. But then it came out that during World War II, he was not only a Wehrmacht soldier, as he claimed his whole life, but he was also had much bigger responsibility, and he was part of some horrible crimes that happened
in Greece. In Greece, yeah.
And you have a scene that is, I think, newspapers, when the film was shown a couple of years ago in Croatia, there was newspapers wrote about that. Scene when you talk about Waldheim's visit to Tito, and Tito asking him sarcastically, how come you have never been to Yugoslavia? So do you think that Tito knew about his history and that Yugoslav secret agency?
Of course he knew. And Waldheim had the guts to say, I've never been in your beautiful country. Of course Tito knew that he was here. I mean, Tito was a partisan. I mean, and he was a smart man. And they had all their secret, all the documents. I'm sure you could find today in the archives here documents we don't know yet. But at the time, many historians tried to search, also here in Zagreb and in Belgrade, in other places, and I'm sure there is more evidence against him. But of course, to have maybe after a certain time he believed his lies himself, I think. And to Tito, I'm the first time in your country was quite strange.
Yeah, but they played the game, right? Tito did not disclose the history.
Well, of course.
Smarter to have him as a...
Of course, and there are many rumors, and all this we don't know yet. And when we showed the film in Belgrade, many people asked me about it, but I couldn't answer it. Because when he was Secretary General of the UN for 10 years, his closest collaborator was from Yugoslavia. So maybe that's a rumor, no evidence. They used him. The Yugoslavians, maybe also the Russians, that they used him to work in their interest. That's possible, but we don't have the documents from the UN yet, or from other sources. So, that will be for another filmmaker to make this film, when it's possible to get all this information.
So Wolfgang, he won the election. He was president for how many years?
One period. No, one period.
Yeah, but he was. I saw the picture of him with Tudjman. So he was president of Austria in the early 90s, still, right? When he won the election,
in 86, and he was president in 91.
91. Yeah. He was the one who recognized Croatia as an independent state.
Yeah, of course. The Austrians were. Our foreign minister at the time was the first who recognized Croatia to save Catholic and Christian Europe. Yeah,
Okay, and he died what, like 7-8 years ago?
I don't remember.
What is his position? What is remembrance of him in Austria today? And how, when your film was screened in 2018, I know it was candidate for Oscar from Austria, right? What was the reception of this film?
Amazing. It was, there were so many spectators and mainly young people. And that is luck in life of a filmmaker, that the film came out at the right moment. Again, that's because when it came out in 2018, it was shown in Berlin at the Berlinale. Trump was already in office, and Viktor Orban and other nice guys. So the film became kind of a parable for other people who lie. People talked about Nixon who had lied, because Waldheim was not a Nazi, he was mainly a liar. And when the film came out, people had thoughts about other liars who are in power today. So many, many young people came to see the film, and there were big discussions. And these young people were also interested in our way of resistance, how we organized our resistance, our manifestations, and with the posters and so on, which was much easier at the time, because it was easy for us to get into a press conference and show our posters. I think today it wouldn't be possible with all the security and the cameras and so on. Yeah, it was a very big success, I must say, and it won the biggest award in Berlin and so on. So it was, and many people, talked about what's going on in their country in politics after seeing the film.
Unfortunately, I don't have the scene prepared to talk about where you is holding on a live. It was live television, right?
Yeah.
Because kind of press conference.
It was a press conference. They brought all kinds of many old men who talked in favor of Waldheim. And we were standing in the back and we had folded our posters, and the bright idea was not to unfold them in the back. And they were full of cameras. International TV was there, maybe 25 cameras. So we silently went in front and put ourselves behind the podium and unfolded our posters, so nobody could throw us out. And our posters were in the images during the whole press conference. Yeah, ideas like that we have.
Okay, but let's watch. We have some time, maybe for the ending. It's a nice clip because it's something that you would call well. We go back to the beginning, but real documentary. The clip from which you shot with your black and white video camera, and it is from Waltz with Waldheim. So that's insert number 8, broj 8.
Jetzt ging es nicht mehr allein um den Kandidaten. Die Stimmung hatte sich verselbstständigt.
Das verkehrte Interesse hat sie ja.
Ja, aber bitte, sagen Sie mir jetzt einmal, warum ist überhaupt der Hitler gekommen? Warum?
Ja,
warum haben nicht die Herren Rothschild und wie sie waren, einmal das Geld und das Volk gegeben und dass sie was verdienen, die Arbeitslosen? Warum war das nicht? Ja, und der Hitler hat die Arbeit hergebracht, oder was?
Ja, ich gehört ja
auch. Die Leute wären damals mit dem Teufel mitgegangen. Sie waren ja nicht da, wie die Arbeitslosigkeit.
Und jetzt machen wir es genauso. Jetzt gehen wir noch einmal mit dem Teufel.
Das ist kein Teufel. Der Mensch ist katholisch.
Doch einfach, die Juden lügen einfach was daher. Ja, was ist geil? Die Juden lügen. Schauen Sie so aus. Ich habe Ihnen meine Meinung gesagt, jedenfalls nicht für richtig.
Wer ist denn auf der Welt, wer beherrscht die Welt? Wer? Der Deutsche oder der Jude? Wer beherrscht die Welt? Wer? Wer? Du gescheiter du. Wer? Die Juden vielleicht? Na, das gab's dann immer noch. Noch immer noch. Ja, da hat er recht, der Herr.
Wenn sie so demonstrieren, dann sind sie die Ersten.
Die Juden wollen es vertreten, die droht, und der Amerikaner hat jeder 8 ist Analphabet, die droht um die Herst. Und da brauchst du Judenhirn, brauchen sie dazu. In Europa brauchen kein Judenhirn nicht. Wir haben gescheite Leute nur. Das kennt sich als Amerikaner, ist droht und kennt sich als Kohl. Wir sind in Europa gescheit nur. Wir brauchen die offene, gehaltene Herren. Da gibt's es werden was sagen. Wenn es nicht so frech gewesen wäre, dann wäre sowas nicht gekommen.
So frech wie Sie waren Sie lang nicht.
Nicht?
So frech wie Sie waren Sie lang nicht.
Heute bitte ein Juden. Bitte ein Juden. Ja.
Du bist in die Erde gehen.
Ja, okay.
Ja, sie werden in die Erde gehen.
Ja. Siehst du die Baum bekommen, gell?
Ja.
Ja, die Baum bekommen. Du trinkst an die jüdische
Wieso sagen Sie zu den Herren jüdische Drecksau?
Sie sind doch unverschämt. Sie müssen sich schämen. Schämen.
Haben Sie jüdische Drecksau gesagt? Wissen Sie, was dafür angezeigt werden?
Ja,
und sollen Sie.
Woher nehmen Sie den Mut, das lachend hier mitten am hellen Tag am Stephansplatz sagen Sie diese Sachen? Sie glauben also, es ist eine Stimmung hinter Ihnen, die ist erlaubt? Sie glauben nach uns? Sie sind nicht sicher,
das ist ja meine Heimat. Was willst du denn?
Aber unsere auch hier.
Und die bedeutend höheren Maß.
You cannot film anymore since we have social media.
Why do you think? Because people are more self-aware, or
No, because they sit at home and write these things.
Yes, of course, yeah.
And you can just film computers, so it's boring.
Do we have a question? Because how much time do we still have here? 5 minutes. Okay. Let's move to something more. You make new film about children, right? So you make a new film with kids, so something completely different.
Yes, I make a new film right now, and that's more long-term project because we started to film them 1.5 years ago, and when they were 7 years old. And there were many lockdowns, no school and so on, so we keep on shooting. And now in Austria, our school system is, we have 4 years of primary school, and then already at the age of 10, people are split. Some go to high school, to gymnasium, and some go to a kind of not so good schools. So we shoot in the biggest primary school in Vienna, which is a school where they have 800 pupils, and not one kid has 2 parents who speak German. So all of these kids who are from many different countries speak German quite poorly. And they are sweet, but for many that's a big problem to advance. And many of them are born in Vienna, and also their parents are already born there. But people have a big problem to learn German, and the school system is very poor and getting worse all the time because they are not really supported, and it's very bad, actually. The system is very bad. But it's not a film about the system, it's a film about the kids, and you understand the problems through them.
And who decides if they go one way or the other at the age of 10? Is it some kind of test, or they get
There are many tests, and there are their grades. And yeah, I mean, they speak, there are many kids from former Yugoslavia, and many kids, half of the class is kids from Turkey, I think. So they have different languages, but they speak a bad German together. Yeah, they can't learn proper German because nobody really, except the teacher, speaks German to them. And the moment they leave school, they speak in their language. So that's a big problem. And I think the Austrian government is not aware of the problem. They think everything is fine. But it's very interesting to find out. There are many Muslim kids from Bosnia, from Turkey, from Syria, 2 refugee kids from Syria, and so on. So it's really interesting to follow them. And I want to follow them again till another year, because then it will be decided how they continue.
So you follow a couple of characters, or the whole class, or you have one main character, or you still?
No, I started with the whole class, but of course some kids are more in front than the others. I mean, that's always the case. No, but I don't like this dispositif which is very much TV for me, that you choose 3 characters and follow them. I think that's a bit boring.
Yeah, okay. It reminds me of a film, Mr. Bachmann, that was, it's but in a different setting and with a different, but the story is a little bit similar, right? German system is a little bit similar to Austrian, I guess. Yeah.
It's better.
Is it?
The German system, they have smaller classes, they have more teachers. It's a bit better. And Bachmann is more a film about the teacher and older kids. They are already 15 or something.
Yeah, because this really sounds scary that you're at the age of, it sounds scary that you're divided at the age of 15, 16 or 18, but at the age of 10 it's
that's the same that's really too early, much too early. And the kids in the Bachmann film, they speak very well German. So they have been supported, somebody had worked with them. Our kids will not speak like that at the age of 14, 15, I'm sure, unfortunately.
Okay, thank you very, very much for this nice talk. For me it was very interesting, and for your films that I enjoyed a lot watching in the last couple of weeks. So I'm looking very much forward to see your next one. Okay.
Hvala.